Well, hey, Phil here from the Blue Envelope channel. So this video is a little different. I don't know about everybody else, but I have this big old folder in my cabinet labeled spiritual, and it's just kind of a bunch of papers and stuff I accumulated my years as a faithful witness to the Most High. So I don't know, I thought we could just kind of go through it and see what's in there. A lot of this stuff I haven't looked at in 10 years, so I don't know myself. So we'll check it out. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I couldn't figure out how to do it without an overhead projector, but I finally found a super high-tech technique on the internet, so we'll try it out tonight. So this is a Kingdom Hall construction newsletter dated August 2002. So I don't know if this was common everywhere, but the Regional Building Committee, as they were called back in the day, this is something they would send out during the construction season in New York to keep everybody up to date. You can see there's two builds planned here. One of them's in West Jamestown, New York. That's where I lived. Actually, that hall was sold off a couple years ago, so I guess they barely got 20 years out of it before they cashed in. Sorry about the grid overlay on the screen. That's the only way I could figure out to get to use the iPhone as a little makeshift overhead projector here. I was on the sound department, which I didn't actually have any real knowledge or training in electrical or sound, so I don't know if it was the best fit, but I enjoyed being on construction sites, so that was fun. This is one of my talks I had written. I'm guessing a lot of the stuff in this folder will be talks I saved that I liked, just in case I could reuse them in some way down the road later. Kind of as a witness, my only gauge as for what's a good speaker is listening to other witnesses. I don't think I'd ever heard a TED Talk or anything, so a lot of these I thought they were really good back in the day, but looking at them now, not sure if this was some notes for a talk when I was in the Spanish congregation or what the story is here. So this is one of those forms that would kind of, were unique to each congregation, that some elders would be real insistent that you'd use for everything be decently well arranged. So this was for the public meeting chairmanship, what you were supposed to say before and after the public talk. Always lots of little idiosyncrasies that different congregations develop over the years like this. Here's my little ID card from when I temped at Bethel for a couple weeks in 2001. I wanted to hang on to that, even though I actually had zero desire to apply permanently to Bethel after those couple weeks. Didn't quite know what to do with myself after that, because I'd kind of planned to go to Bethel, and there was kind of only three options that I could see as a witness guy. You could go to Bethel, you could go to Gilead and be a missionary, which I was pretty bad at field service, so didn't want to do that. And then the third option was go to ministerial training school, or SKE as they call it now, and become a special pioneer circuit overseer, which didn't really want to do that either, to be totally honest. So I saved this for some reason. I'm guessing it looks like, if I had to guess, I must have given a talk, and these were some suggestions that the school overseer or whoever gave to me about how to introduce scriptures, it looks like. So I must have thought those were some hot tips there. There's an application I picked up for a ministerial training school. Blank, as you'll notice, never filled out. I had a habit of attending the meetings at the assembly or convention for, to apply for Bethel or MTS, and then always got cold feet, which long term was probably a good thing. Kind of a harbinger of things to come, I guess. Here's a little info packet I must have gotten when I arrived to Bethel for temp work there. No real orientation or anything. It wasn't worth investing that much time for somebody who's only there for a week or two. Here's another thing one of the elders must have made to kind of instruct all the sound guys how to set things up. All laminated and everything. Definitely must have been one of his bugaboos. This is some handwritten directions from to get to the assembly hall. Remember back when we still had to get directions from somebody? These look like they're from my dad. It's his handwriting, so it must have been one of the first times I was going to the assembly by myself, I guess. Here's my notes from, I think this was probably the first assembly part I ever had. It says I was being interviewed by Brother Tracy. He was a CO I had back in the day. So I must have just been a young whippersnapper here. I got baptized at 12, so it must have been not long after that. Very cringy interview here. It mentions 3 major pressures I was facing at the time. The pressure to use foul language, to wear ripped jeans, and follow the dress of rock groups. There's a map of Watchtower Farms. Must have been with the orientation packet from when I temped there. And here's the letter I got saying to go, being accepted to temp there. It was 2001, so I would have been about 23, still living at home. Yikes. Here's a little thank you letter they sent out after I was done working there. So this was a letter handed out, I guess, it must have been when I first started pioneering. Some kind of form letter they give to all the new pioneers there. Can't quite remember whose signature that is that did the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. I think it was one of the governing body, but I can't quite remember who. Here's a little form they'd give you. Plan out your week so you could get those 1,000 hours in. A little different now at 600 hours a year. Got a letter here from to all the pioneers at the start of a new service year. A little encouragement from HQ. I'm looking at the date here, October 1st, 97, and I had at least 1 year of pioneering in at this point. So I must have started around 96, which sounds about right because I would have been around 18. Here's the 1998 letter to all the pioneers. 1999 letter. Can't say I ever went back and read these again. I think I kept them more just because it was a letter from the society. It's kind of funny. So I guess this was the year that they dropped the hour requirement down to 840 a year, 70 hours a month. And they're unironically quoting from the 1976 letter to the pioneers where it said, "We're hopeful that many more will swell the pioneer ranks when they drop the hours from 120 to 100, adding to the impact of the preaching and teaching work now drawing toward its climax." So that was 1976. This letter is 1999. It says these words apply with even greater force today as we cross the threshold of the year 2000. And here we are now, 24 years later, still climaxing. It's a very long climax. Here's the 2001 letter to the pioneers. See that letterhead change from the Watchtower Society. Now we're getting stuff from the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And they added this real casual signature. I never was a fan of that. I always liked the classic one from those older letters. This post 9/11 period, that was a couple months after that, wow, it was like the best time ever to be a pioneer. It was so easy to start conversations with people. Here's another form somebody must have been handing out in the hall. Kind of schedule out so you can figure out how you can pioneer. It says if you scored 45 points or more, you could be maybe a regular pioneer. Woot woot. Here's a letter I got for going to pioneer school. Let's see, this was 99. So I guess maybe 98 was my first year pioneering. Not sure on that one. Even then, I thought it was a little weird how the single sisters get their name, but the married sisters are under their husband's name there. It was a little weird going to the pioneer school there because you can see 17 of them were from Circuit PA 12, and then it was just me and one other guy, Sean Avery, from Circuit 13. I'm not sure I don't remember the reason why, but we got sent to this other circuit's pioneer school. So it's kind of weird because we didn't really know anybody down there except the one circuit overseer, Everett Rodricks, was our CO. But, oh well. It was in Meadville, PA, which had a good soft custard restaurant, which I'd never really had real soft custard like that before, so that was good stuff. Yeah, so there's the letter from my CO inviting me to go to pioneer school there. You can see the one big perk there that going to pioneer school counted for 40 hours of service time. So that was kind of a lifesaver, being that it was in August, so right at the end of the service year. Lighten the crunch a little bit. So I've got a bunch of photocopied pages here from the Pioneer School textbook, Shining as Illuminators. So I don't know exactly. You can see my notes there from the school. I'm guessing maybe I had a habit of I would use stuff. I had to do a lot of meetings for field service during the week because there weren't many brothers out. So I'm guessing maybe I was taking pages from the Pioneer School book and then using them in those meetings. Here's a letter that I had to give a talk, number 4 talk on the circuit assembly one year. I don't know what year this was. Richard Crutchfield was the CO at that time. So I spent most of my time in New York Circuit 13, which is kind of western New York, kind of around Buffalo area. Here's a poem a sister gave me when I was going to go temp at Wallkill there. If I'm remembering which sister it was right, Lori, her son, who was my age, he had gone to Bethel a year or two before that to Wallkill. And so she kind of knew the inside scoop that it wasn't all rainbows and puppy dogs, because he had a kind of a hard time, like being homesick and whatnot. So this is, if I remember right, this was some junk mail I got in the mail, and I must have thought it was something I could maybe use in a talk down the road about false religion and how cheesy they are. I don't think I ever used it though. This is kind of like I was in the literature department and magazines and stuff. So this looks like a literature department kind of inside joke thing that somebody gave me. This still is kind of funny to me. A little jokey thing about for pioneers, the pioneer stamp to with a bunch of excuses why you didn't make your time. A poem I picked up from somewhere about how awesome it is to be a regular pioneer. This is a copy of looks like some old letter, a photocopy of it, and somebody gave it to me about giving public talks. Maybe they gave it to me before my first public talk or something. There's another list of tips about public talks. That was probably one of my most favorite parts of being a witness, was giving talks, because it wasn't really like carrying on a conversation, and I could usually try to make them pretty interesting for the folks listening. Although still extremely nervous to give public talks. Like I wanted to, but I always had to have a handkerchief on me because I would just be drenched with sweat. Here's a public talk outline. Choose your associates wisely. Number 116. This doesn't ring a bell, though. I don't think I ever had this talk outline prepared. There's another talk I gave that I must have liked. It looks like it was November 2000. I always gave talks, full manuscript talks. And then basically I would memorize them. I just practice them so much. But I like to have every word down just in case. So here's some other printout of an article one of the elders must have given me. Must have been maybe when I was starting to do shepherding calls or something with the elders. Here's another talk I gave, negotiating a reasonable bride price. That is an unusual subject for a talk in the United States. I don't know if it was assigned to me or if it was something I came up with trying to be clever. I noticed on the second page, one of the witnesses mentioned is named Rawaka Bubu, which I think didn't Ken Cook mention that brother?
I've met Brother Rawaka Bubu and personally heard many of his amazing experiences, some of which he acted out for me.
Okay, this was the thing I was wondering if I still had. There were a couple of brothers in my congregation, and they were super intelligent about witness stuff, but they had been extremely, like bigwigs, influential in the organization locally. And then as they got older, I don't know, they kind of, like when I was there, they weren't even a ministerial servant or anything. They were just brothers in the congregation with no oversight. But anyways, the one brother, Ferd Knapp, he at one point kind of decided to do this project where he would take some of the young brothers, in their late teens, 20 years old kind of thing, and basically like started this little class or school to make them into awesome speakers. And so he had this whole kind of mind mapping thing laid out. So this is the like a worksheet to make your talk out of. So you can see the theme, body, conclusion, principles, relationships, application, questions, definitions, evaluation. And then there's like this instruction worksheet to walk you through it. And it was very good. I need to look it over more. You can see things like you do the conclusion first and then work backwards from there, which is actually a pretty good idea. Here's some notes from like return visits. So this is the stuff I was writing down. I was never super organized with my return visits. So you can see this is just written on a random piece of paper I must have had in my book bag. So this looks like some other talk I gave. I'm not quite sure what's going on because it's a full, That's not written out very well to read from the podium. So I don't know if it was like a last minute thing that I was working on and I didn't get time to type it up. That's very possible. I was not a good manager of my time. This looks like some talk I gave on the service meeting about using the required brochure, which is now long gone. I'm just looking it over. It says that I was up at the assembly hall doing guard duty one Saturday night watching infomercials, and some guy was selling the internet toolbox, and then so that inspired me to make up a thing for this talk called the Bible Study Toolbox, which is the 3 simple steps to starting tons of Bible studies. That's still pretty good, I think.
But never fear. We have the teaching toolbox.
So our teaching toolbox,
The new teaching toolbox.
The simplified teaching toolbox.
They used our teaching toolbox.
We have a teaching toolbox.
the teaching toolbox.
All the tools in our teaching toolbox.
The teaching toolbox.
The teaching toolbox.
Our teaching toolbox.
Don't write in and say, I think that should be in the teaching toolbox. We've gone through all of this at headquarters.
This is my notes from some assembly. That's how I took notes at that time. 2 lines to every line. It's not hard to read at all, no? Okay, so here we go. This is so using one of those outline papers to write a talk. It's even got some bonus illustrations there from me. That's about my level of artistic ability. And if I recall, the tricky thing was this was supposed to be your notes for the talk. You had to give the talk from this piece of paper. So it's kind of like a mind mapping thing, which was not my strong suit. Like I said, I was always straight up manuscript talks and not outlines. But I do have a lot of fond memories of using this to get a little better at giving talks. Here's some letter from the society about giving talks, public talks, tips and tricks. And yeah, so you can see how I got it there with the PS that all ministerial servants should get to read this letter who give public talks. So that's how I got a hold of it. Here we have lawn mowing instructions. There's no task too small in Jehovah's Witnesses for somebody to make a whole whole thing about do's and don'ts of how to do it right. Here's a couple different papers on how to read the whole Bible in a year. So there's that one, just goes in order, Genesis to Revelation. And this one's a little more interesting. This says it's a chronological Bible reading schedule in the order of when things happened. Looks like I didn't get too far on that one. Here's a paper about doing the accounts for the congregation. And it looks like one of the guys here, Kevin Anderson, he was a brother in the hall, and he was kind of a smart guy. So if I'm reading it right, it looks like maybe he even wrote his own accounting program to use for the account servant. Got some examples here of letters that could be written to, not at homes. Very popular pastime in Western New York in the wintertime. Just hang out in the basement of the hall and spend a few hours doing letter writing. You see, you'd have to figure out what the letter was going to be. So that's what this this is, I think. And that would take a long time. And then, then you get into the actual writing of the letters you'd mail out. So even more time. And you kind of compare with everybody else there, see what they were writing. A grand old time. So here's kind of a master scrap copy of a letter that I would send out. That was always a pet thing of mine, that people would say peace and goodwill to men when it was actually supposed to be peace among men of goodwill. So I made a whole letter about it to send out to people. But of course, even writing this on the computer, you couldn't just print 50 copies. You'd have to write each one out longhand from scratch, because that would take longer and you get more hours in. Makes perfect sense. Here's another master one that I came up with. Check out in the last paragraph, it says, I'm a volunteer Bible teacher and have a few openings in my schedule, so please drop me a line if you'd like to learn more about the Bible. That's pretty assertive for me. I think that's I bet if I ran a search on Watchtower Online Library, that would come up. I think I copied that verbatim from some Kingdom ministry. As I recall, didn't get any takers on that one. Here's a letter about applying to do temp work with Bethel. Here's something, a practical remedy for stress relief from the Bible. So it looks like a month's worth of scriptures to meditate on. Here's a copy of healthcare proxy I filled out in 2000. I don't know. I remember they'd do a meeting a talk every January about filling that out. So I don't know if they still do that every year. And here's the guide for filling out the healthcare proxy. There's the actual application for temping at Bethel. Here's a letter I must have got at some meeting about Bethel service. I'm assuming it went with an application for permanent service at Bethel. This is a letter from one of the girls I went to Pioneer School with. So I hung on to that. I think there was a little vibe of she was looking for a husband. Kind of slim picking sometimes for sisters trying to find a husband in the organization. So it makes sense she was hitting up everybody that was in Pioneer School together. Here's another sample copy of coming up with a letter for letter writing. So it looks like the first part in blue is from one of the other pioneers in the hall. I like my transition there. Happily, our Creator has given us a handbook to life, his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's where I came in. Here's the 2002 Pioneer letter. Here's my notes from a CO meeting with the servants and elders. The CO, Brother Dennis Kraft. Kind of forgot about him, I guess. I was looking to see if there's any counsel in there about pornography. That seemed to be a pretty constant theme, but don't actually see any on this one. There's an actual Bethel application. I always like those questions in number 21 there. Morals. Do you listen to heavy metal or rap? Rap is all caps. I guess that was a definite no-go. Or other music inappropriate for Christian. I mean, if you answered yes on that, you kind of get what's coming to you. R-rated movies. Ever had a homosexual relationship? Ever engaged in child sexual molestation? Because, those things, they're all equally evil. And then the part below that is all your health history, which is kind of the same deal. If you're answering yes to anything, that's probably a no-go. Bethel is not really looking to spend any money on treating health problems that folks have, if they can help it anyway. This must be the letter that came with the Bethel application. I just thought this was interesting because you see yet another letterhead here, Religious Order of Jehovah's Witnesses. So yet another corporation or group that under the Watchtower Society umbrella. Just the 2003 letter to regular pioneers. This is a list of all the society's outlines as of 2001. Looks like they're right up to about 150 or so. Can't remember when they dropped when the public talk switched from 45 minutes down to 30 minutes. This looks like an example of maybe a substitute talk that I had to pull together at the last minute because it looks like it's just written on some scrap paper from the Kingdom Hall. Definitely gave a lot of substitute talks back in the day. So this is a little poem called Train Ride. It's about the one train going to paradise and the other train going off to destruction at Armageddon. Kind of an interesting little poem here. I have no idea who this person is that wrote it. I guess I met them somewhere along the way. Hey, it's a better poem than that 2 weeks after Armageddon one that I mentioned on a video one time. This one's a little more cheerful. Here's some notes from a 2003 elders meeting with the CO. I was just looking the second section there, the Pioneer Assist Others program. Hey, remember that? That kind of came and went. Probably everybody's seen these already, but the what you'd fill out if you wanted to be auxiliary pioneer for a month. Another talk I wrote. I just like this one because it mentions snozberries there in the introduction. Got to throw in a little Charlie and the Chocolate Factory there. There's the form for the weekly announcements. At one of the congregations I was in, it seemed like every congregation had their own form for that. Whatever the presiding overseer or coordinator liked. This is something somebody made all the different schedules you could use to be a regular pioneer. All kinds of different scenarios. If you don't work, if you work part-time, you work 4 days a week, full-time. Everybody can be a pioneer. I guess they kind of can nowadays. Here's the instructions for Watchtower Library on CD-ROM 2009. Those were the days, huh, when you get a new CD every year. It's kind of nice, though, because they couldn't edit stuff on the fly, and you would never know about it, because you'd have the hard copy to compare stuff. We talk about all the ways the internet's been bad for religions like Jehovah's Witnesses, but there is a few ways where it's been an improvement for them. A lot easier to have stuff go down the memory hole. Some stuff to help you fill out the healthcare proxy about blood fractions. Always a tricky subject for rank and file witnesses not in the medical field. Then we get into my collection of lapel cards. So these were some of the conventions here. So this is the first batch. There's bunch number 2, They got kind of more, less, like there's no pictures on them anymore compared to the early cards. But I guess they stand out more, so if you saw it on somebody's lapel, somebody would maybe ask a question about it, so that's probably what they were going for. So yeah, it looks like I switched to Spanish in 2006, and it looks like 2012, I guess, was my last district convention, regional convention. Here's just some other random cards I had. One from being a tenant in 2002. Got my card identifying myself as a regular pioneer as of 1998. I think you were supposed to turn it in if you stopped being a pioneer, so I was being a bad boy. Hung on to mine. And we got a couple 3 cards here from going to KM school. Looks like 2002, 2006, 2011. So every 4 or 5 years they held one. Last one in Spanish. So I don't know how much I got out of that exactly. And yeah, well, that's about the end of my spiritual folder. So kind of fun to check out what's in there. Yeah, I'll hang on to it. Maybe I'll go through it in another 20 years here, see what's what. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye now.